welcome. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Or, I might show up at your door. I'm just here to share some creepy stories, so sit back and enjoy. Disclaimer: the content presented in the video is purely for entertainment purposes only. The theories and stories discussed in this video are speculative and are not supported by any evidence or proof. Viewer discretion is advised. Posted by user AM_developer. 10:42 p.m. I need to document this. I need someone to know what's happening here, because I don't think the authorities are being straight with us. If you're reading this, please share it. This might be happening in your neighborhood next. It started 3 days ago. I was coding late, like I usually do since Rebecca passed away. The house gets too quiet at night, and work helps keep my mind off the emptiness. The soft glow of my monitors was the only light in my home office when my phone suddenly lit up with that harsh emergency alert tone. You know the one? That blaring, attention-demanding sound that makes your heart skip. I expected another flash flood warning or amber alert. We get those sometimes in Camden Heights. But what I read made me think there was some kind of system error. Emergency alert. Camden Heights Police Department, 10:27 p.m. Do not look at faces in windows after dark. Remain indoors. Close all blinds. This is not a test. I remember laughing. Actually laughing. It seemed like some IT guy's dark joke that accidentally went live, or maybe a hacker got into the emergency system. I took a screenshot before dismissing it, thinking I'd post it on Reddit later for some karma. Then my phone buzzed again. Same alert, word for word. I checked social media, expecting to see posts about the weird alert, but there was nothing. Not even on our neighborhood forum where Mrs. Abernathy reports every stray cat sighting. I called my neighbor Eliza, who's usually up late reading. Did you get a strange alert just now? I asked when she picked up. About the windows? Yeah. What the hell is it supposed to mean? So it wasn't just me. Probably some kind of mistake, I said, but something about it felt wrong. Emergency systems have safeguards against accidental broadcasts, and this one had come through twice. Antonio, there's been weird stuff happening around here lately, Eliza said, her voice quieter than before. Mrs. Rodriguez swears she saw someone watching her from the Petersons' house, but when she called them, they were out of town. I brushed it off. Eliza works at the library and has a thing for urban legends and local history. She's always connecting dots that aren't there. Just some kids messing around, I said. Or she's seeing things. We hung up, and I went back to work, but I couldn't focus. The alert had gotten under my skin somehow. I found myself avoiding looking out my office window despite how ridiculous that seemed. Around midnight, I closed my laptop and headed upstairs to bed. That's when I heard the tapping. Gentle at first, like tree branches against glass. Except there's no tree outside my bedroom window. I froze in the hallway, listening. 3 taps, pause. 3 more taps, pause. It was rhythmic, deliberate. Something primitive in my brain told me not to look. The alert flashed in my mind. Do not look at faces in windows after dark. But that's absurd, right? So I looked. From where I stood in the hallway, I could see just the edge of my bedroom window. The curtains were open. I never closed them since the backyard faces a wooded area with no neighbors. At first, I saw nothing unusual, just darkness and the faint reflection of my bedroom lamp. Then something moved. A shape darker than the night outside shifted slightly. I squinted, trying to make it out. A hand pressed against the glass. A human hand, pale and slender with familiar silver rings on the index and middle fingers. Rebecca's rings. My heart stopped. My wife has been dead for 8 months. I backed away, convinced I was hallucinating from exhaustion. I blinked hard, but when I looked again, the hand was gone. I rushed to the window, flipping on every light switch on the way, but there was nothing outside. No footprints in the soft earth below my window, no disturbance in the grass. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my living room with all the lights on, blinds now closed, refreshing local news sites and social media for any mention of the alert or strange sightings. Nothing. At 6:13 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. Hello. I answered, my voice hoarse from lack of sleep. Mr. Mercer? A woman's voice, professional, direct. This is Captain Diane Rivera with the Camden Heights Police Department. We're conducting wellness checks following last night's emergency notification. Have you experienced anything unusual since the alert? The alert was real? Not a mistake. Pause. Sir, I need to know if you've observed anything unusual, particularly regarding windows in your home. Who are you really? I demanded. How do I know you're actually police? That's a reasonable concern, she said, sounding almost relieved at my suspicion. You can call our station directly and ask for me. I encourage verification. I Googled the station number while keeping her on the line with my other phone. When the desk sergeant confirmed Captain Rivera was indeed conducting wellness calls, I felt a chill. I may have seen something, I admitted when I got back on the line. A hand on my bedroom window. It had my dead wife's rings. Silence on the line. Then, Mr. Mercer, I'm sending an officer to your location. Stay away from all windows until they arrive. Do not attempt to communicate with anything you might see. Do you understand? What is this? What's happening? We're still determining the nature of the phenomenon, she said, her official tone slipping. But initial reports suggest these manifestations may appear as deceased individuals known to the observer. My mouth went dry. Manifestation? You mean like ghosts? No, not ghosts, Captain Rivera said firmly. Until we understand more, please follow the alert instructions. Officer Kendrick will be at your door within 20 minutes. He'll have identification. Verify it before letting him in. After she hung up, another emergency alert blared on my phone. Emergency alert. Camden Heights Police Department.
6:22 Uhr morgens.
Phenomenon persists in daylight hours. Continue to avoid windows. Do not acknowledge visual anomalies. Do not respond to familiar voices. I closed every blind in the house and waited for Officer Kendrick, jumping at every sound. As I sat there, I heard my laptop ping with a new email. From Rebecca's account, which should have been shut down months ago. The subject line read only, "Let me in, Antonio. I can see you." I didn't open it. Couldn't. But as I stared at the notification on my screen, I heard the tapping again. 3 taps. Pause. 3 taps. Coming from every window in my house at once. Someone's knocking at my door now. I think it's Officer Kendrick, but I'm going to check his ID carefully. If I don't update this post in 24 hours, please contact Captain Diane Rivera at Camden Heights PD. And whatever you do, don't look at the faces in the windows. They're not who they appear to be. Posted by user AM_developer, 3:17 a.m. Officer Kendrick came and went. For those asking about my safety in the comments, I'm still here, still me. At least I think so. How would you know if you weren't yourself anymore? The officer was young, nervous, kept checking his radio every few minutes like he was expecting new orders. He asked me detailed questions about what I'd seen, typing everything into a tablet. When I mentioned Rebecca's rings, his fingers hesitated over the screen. "You're sure they were her rings?" he asked. "Specifically identifiable?" I described them. The thin silver band with the small opal on her index finger that I'd given her on our first anniversary, and the twisted silver ring on her middle finger that had belonged to her grandmother. He nodded slowly. "That fits the pattern." "What pattern?" I demanded. Kendrick glanced at the nearest window, despite the closed blinds. Everyone's seeing people they knew, people who died, and they're getting specific details right. He wouldn't tell me more, just repeated the instructions from the alerts. Don't look at windows. Don't respond to familiar voices. He left me a card with Captain Rivera's direct number and told me to call immediately if the manifestations attempted any other form of contact. After he left, I couldn't stop thinking about that email from Rebecca's account. I know I shouldn't have, but I opened it. There was no text in the body, just an image attachment. When I downloaded it, my screen displayed a black rectangle that looked like a corrupted file. But when I looked away and then back again, for just a second, I swear I saw Rebecca's face in that rectangle, like she was on the other side of a dark window, looking in. I deleted the email and ran a full system scan. Nothing. No malware, no viruses. My phone buzzed again around midnight. Another alert. Emergency alert. Camden Heights Police Department, 12:03 a.m. Increased activity detected. Secure all digital devices. Power off and used screens. Phenomenon may manifest through digital displays. Power off and used screens? The phenomenon can appear through digital displays now? My heart raced as I realized I had 5 active screens just in my office. 3 monitors, my phone, my tablet. I quickly shut everything down except my phone, which I needed to stay informed. I called Eliza right away. She answered on the first ring. Antonio, are you seeing this new alert? Her voice was shaking. It's getting worse. The Wilsons down the street. They saw their son in their TV. He died in Afghanistan 3 years ago. How do you know that? Mrs. Wilson called me before the police took their statements. She said he looked wrong somehow, like a glitchy photo come to life. And he kept repeating the same phrase, "Let me come home." My blood went cold. That's almost exactly what Rebecca's email had said. "Let me in." There's more, Eliza continued. I've been researching since that first alert. This isn't the first time something like this has happened. What do you mean? I got up and double-checked every blind in the house as we talked. In 1998, a small town in Oregon had a similar incident. Local radio started broadcasting warnings about faces in windows. Within a week, 17 people had disappeared. The official report blamed a mass delusion followed by voluntary disappearances, but the witness accounts. She paused. They match what's happening here. That's not possible, I said. We'd have heard about it, would we? The government is good at burying things they can't explain. And the Oregon incident wasn't the only one. I found references to similar events in 1972, 1946, and even accounts from the 1880s that might be related. Always small communities, always starting with warnings about not looking at faces. My phone beeped, another call coming in. Captain Rivera. I have to go, I told Eliza. Keep digging, but be careful. I switched to Rivera's call. She got straight to the point. Mr. Mercer, we're implementing additional safety measures. Military personnel will be arriving within the hour to establish a security perimeter around affected neighborhoods. Please remain in your home. Military? What's really happening, Captain? She was silent for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was lower. The phenomenon is spreading. We've had 12 confirmed sightings in Camden Heights, and similar reports are coming in from Lakeside and Westmoreland now. The faces, they're not just watching anymore. What are they doing? I asked, not sure I wanted the answer. Attempting communication. And in 3 cases, manifestations have been reported inside homes where residents violated protocol and made direct eye contact. Inside? How is that possible? We don't know yet. Lieutenant Colonel Hayes is bringing in specialized equipment to help us understand what we're dealing with. Until then, maintain all precautions. She paused. And Mr. Mercer? If you have any photographs of your late wife displayed in your home, I suggest you turn them face down or put them away. After we hung up, I walked through my house, turning around the framed photos of Rebecca. As I reached for the last one, our wedding photo on the mantel, I froze. In the reflection of the glass covering the photograph, I could see my living room window behind me. The blind was slightly askew, leaving a thin vertical strip of darkness visible. And in that strip, barely perceptible, was an eye. Watching me, I dropped the photo and spun around. Nothing visible through the gap in the blind. With shaking hands, I fixed it to fully cover the window, then retrieved the fallen photo. The frame had cracked, spiderweb fractures spreading across Rebecca's smiling face. As I set it face down on the mantel, my phone chimed with a text message. Why won't you look at me anymore? "Don't you miss me?" It came from Rebecca's old number, which had been disconnected months ago. I blocked the number immediately, but seconds later, a new message appeared from a different unknown number. "It's rude to ignore your wife, Antonio." Outside, I heard the rumble of heavy vehicles moving into the neighborhood. Military transport trucks, probably. As I peered through a tiny crack in the blinds, careful not to expose too much, I saw soldiers in unmarked black uniforms setting up what looked like specialized equipment on street corners. One device resembled a satellite dish pointed at the sky, while others were being mounted to utility poles. My doorbell rang, making me jump. Through the peephole, I saw a man in a military uniform, ramrod straight posture, cropped gray hair at the temples. "Mr. Mercer?" "Lieutenant Colonel Victor Hayes, Special Containment Division. We're installing protective measures on all homes in the affected area. May I come in?" I checked his ID before opening the door, just as Captain Rivera had instructed with Officer Kendrick. Everything looked official, but something about Hayes made me uneasy. His eyes were too alert, too eager. As he stepped inside, my phone buzzed with another alert. "Emergency alert. Camden Heights Police Department, 1:42 a.m. Caution. Digital entities may attempt impersonation. Verify identity of all officials. Report unusual behavior immediately. Remain vigilant." Hayes glanced at my phone screen, his expression unreadable. "Quite a situation we have here," he said with a tight smile. "Don't worry, Mr. Mercer. We've seen this before. We know how to handle it." Posted by user AM_developer, 11:58 p.m. Hayes left after installing small black devices on all my windows, both inside and outside. "Signal dampeners," he called them, though he wouldn't explain what signals they were dampening. They're about the size of a deck of cards with a single blinking red light. The one in my bedroom kept me awake all night, that tiny red pulse like a mechanical heartbeat. I haven't slept properly in days now. When I do drift off, I dream of Rebecca standing outside our home, her face pressed against every window simultaneously, mouth moving in silent words I can't quite make out. This morning, when I checked in with the neighborhood forum, half the usual active users were missing. No posts, no comments, not even appearing in the online now counter. Those who were posting reported similar experiences to mine. Faces of dead loved ones, text messages from disconnected numbers, emails from defunct accounts. Mr. Wilson from down the street hasn't posted since yesterday morning. His wife Susan wrote a brief message asking if anyone had seen him. Then she went silent too. Hayes's protective measures don't seem to be working. If anything, things are escalating. After sundown today, I received 3 more texts from unknown numbers, all with messages that could only have come from Rebecca. "Remember our honeymoon in Kyoto when you got food poisoning and I had to translate at the hospital? The leak under the kitchen sink you fixed with my red nail polish because the hardware store was closed? I know you still sleep on your side of the bed. You never could get used to sleeping in the middle." All true. All things only Rebecca would know. I called Captain Rivera to report the messages. "Delete them without responding," she instructed. "We're seeing increased attempts at emotional manipulation. The entities are becoming more sophisticated." "Entities? What exactly are we dealing with here?" She hesitated. "We're still gathering data. Lieutenant Colonel Hayes' team has extracted some useful information from homes where incidents occurred." "You mean where people disappeared?" Another pause. "Yes, we've confirmed 9 missing persons so far. In each case, security footage shows the individuals approaching windows or screens where manifestations were reported. Then, it's hard to describe. They seem to step through, though physically that's impossible." "Through solid glass?" I know how it sounds, Mr. Mercer, but we've reviewed the footage. One moment they're there, the next they're gone. No broken glass, no physical evidence of departure. I thought about Rebecca's hand on my window that first night. The familiar rings. The way her emails and texts contained information only she would know. "Captain," I said slowly, "what if these aren't some kind of entities? What if they're actually our dead What if they're trying to come back? The line was silent so long I thought we'd been disconnected. Mr. Mercer, Rivera finally said, her voice unnaturally calm. For your own safety, I strongly advise against that line of thinking. These manifestations may appear to be deceased loved ones, but they are exploiting emotional vulnerabilities. They are not who they appear to be. Do you understand? But even as she spoke, I heard a soft tapping from my bedroom window. 3 taps. Pause. 3 taps. Our old signal for when Rebecca would come home late and didn't want to wake me by using her key. Mr. Mercer? Are you there? Do you understand what I'm telling you? I have to go, I said, ending the call. Against every warning, every instruction, I walked to my bedroom. The signal dampener Hayes had installed was dark. No blinking red light. Deactivated somehow. The tapping continued, rhythmic and familiar. I knew I shouldn't look, but after all these months of emptiness, of speaking to a gravestone that never answered back, the possibility that it really might be her, I approached the window. Through a gap in the curtains where they didn't quite meet, I could see a sliver of darkness outside. The tapping stopped as I got closer. I reached for the edge of the curtain. My phone shrieked with an emergency alert just as my fingers touched the fabric. Emergency alert. Camden Heights Joint Task Force. 10:17 p.m. Maximum alert status. Multiple containment failures reported. Do not approach windows under any circumstances. Entities can now manipulate electronic devices. Dampeners may be compromised. My hand froze. I looked at the signal dampener again. Dead, just as the alert warned. As if in response, my bedroom lights flickered. Once, twice, then stabilized. The tapping at the window changed rhythm. Faster, more insistent. Desperate, I backed away from the curtain, heart pounding. My retreat was answered by a sound that turned my blood to ice. Rebecca's voice, clear as day, coming from just outside the window. Antonio, please. I've come so far to get back to you. Don't leave me out here alone. It was her voice. Her exact voice, the slight huskiness, the way she always said my name with the emphasis on the second syllable. No recording or AI could capture that perfectly. The military men are lying to you, her voice continued. They created this. They opened the door between worlds, and now they're trying to keep it shut. But some of us found a way through. I shouldn't be listening. I shouldn't engage. Every alert, every instruction from Rivera and Hayes said to ignore them. But how do you ignore the voice of the person you've ached to hear for 8 months? They don't want us to reunite, Antonio. They're afraid of what we've become, of what we know now. My phone rang, Captain Rivera again. I answered on speaker, not taking my eyes off the curtain window. Mr. Mercer, Rivera's voice was urgent. Our sensors detected tampering with your dampener. Are you experiencing any manifestations? Before I could answer, Rebecca's voice called out again, louder. Don't trust her, Antonio. Rivera works for Hayes. Ask her about Project Looking Glass. Ask her about the digital afterlife experiments. Captain Rivera's sharp intake of breath was audible through the phone. Mr. Mercer, you need to leave that room immediately. Go to your bathroom, lock the door, and wait for our team. We're 3 minutes out. What is Project Looking Glass? I demanded, backing toward my bedroom door. What does she mean by digital afterlife experiments? It's manipulating you, Rivera insisted. Using information harvested from your private data to create an emotional connection. We've seen this before. As if to contradict her, something pressed against the other side of the curtain. A hand outlined clearly against the fabric. I could see the silhouette of rings on the fingers. I saved every email, every text, Rebecca's voice said, softer now. I downloaded every photo. I backed up every memory. When they said I had 6 months to live, I started uploading. They promised it would be like sleep, but it's not, Antonio. It's like being trapped behind glass, watching the world go on without you. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Ask Hayes what happened to the test subjects, Rebecca's voice insisted. Ask him where the original volunteers went when their digital copies wanted to come home. The hand against the curtain pressed harder, the thin fabric stretching around the fingers. I could see the outline of the opal ring now, distorted through the cloth. 2 minutes out, Rivera said. Stay on the line. The curtain began to move, sliding slowly along the rod as if being drawn aside from the outside. I should run. I should hide in the bathroom as Rivera instructed. But I remained frozen, watching as the edge of the curtain revealed a sliver of the night beyond, and a pale hand with those silver rings. Then, gradually, a face came into view. Rebecca's face, exactly as I remembered her before the cancer took hold. Her dark hair falling in waves, her brown eyes reflecting the light from my bedroom. But something was wrong with the image. It seemed to flicker slightly at the edges, like a video with compression artifacts. Antonio, she said, her lips moving in perfect sync with the words. They're coming for you now, but it's not too late. You can still join me. All you have to do is let me in. Posted by user AM_developer, 4:32 a.m. They came for me last night. For soldiers in black tactical gear, led by Hayes himself. They didn't knock, just breached my front door with some kind of portable battering ram. I was still in my bedroom, still staring at Rebecca's face in the window. Couldn't look away, couldn't move. Her eyes held me there, familiar yet somehow wrong. Too bright, too fixed. When the soldiers stormed in, Rebecca's face contorted with anger. The glass of the window began to vibrate, a high-pitched whine filling the air. One of the soldiers shouted something about a breach attempt and threw a device that looked like a small metal sphere toward the window. It emitted a pulse of blue light, and Rebecca's image fractured like a broken digital display, her scream cutting off abruptly. Hayes grabbed my arm. We need to move you. This location is compromised. They escorted me to an unmarked van, a hood placed over my head once we reached the street, for your protection, they claimed. I couldn't see where they were taking me, but we drove for about 20 minutes before stopping. When they removed the hood, I was in what looked like a school gymnasium converted into an emergency command center. Rows of cots lined one wall. The windows were covered with black material and more of those dampening devices. Military personnel and police officers moved with purpose between workstations filled with monitoring equipment. Captain Rivera approached immediately. Take him to medical for evaluation, she ordered. Standard protocol for direct exposure. Hayes looked like he wanted to argue but nodded curtly. The medical evaluation was invasive blood draws, eye scans, cognitive tests, and dozens of questions about what exactly Rebecca had said to me. A doctor I'd never seen before kept asking if I felt unusual urges to approach windows or screens, or if I experienced gaps in memory or consciousness. When they finally released me, Rivera was waiting. She led me to a quiet corner of the gym where a cluster of chairs had been arranged around a small table. Eliza was there, looking exhausted, a bandage on her forearm similar to the one they'd given me after my blood test. Antonio, she said, relief evident in her voice. I thought you might be like the others. What others? Rivera gestured for me to sit. We've been tracking the disappearances. 23 confirmed cases now across 3 communities. But there's a new development. Some individuals who were reported missing have returned. That's good news, isn't it? I asked, though the grim expression on both women's faces suggested otherwise. They're not themselves, Eliza said quietly. Mrs. Wilson came back this morning. She was found sitting in her living room, staring at the wall. When the recovery team approached her, she spoke to them, but Eliza shuddered. It wasn't right. Her voice had this digital quality, like when a call has bad reception. And she kept asking for her husband.
Rivera Navid.
The entity appears to have Mrs. Wilson's memories, her appearance, even her mannerisms according to neighbors who knew her. But it's not her. You mean something is impersonating her? I asked. We believe these entities are using the digital imprints of the deceased to create convincing replicas, Rivera explained. Then they use those replicas to establish emotional connections with the living, attempting to cross over. When they succeed, they displace the original person and take their physical form. A chill ran through me. And the displaced person? We don't know, Rivera admitted. But based on what these entities have communicated, they may be trapped on the other side, wherever that is. A digital afterlife, Eliza murmured, glancing at me. Just like Rebecca said to you. Rivera's expression hardened. The entities are manipulative. They use information harvested from our digital footprints to seem authentic. She turned to me. Your wife couldn't have known about any government projects. These are fabrications designed to create doubt and division. But Eliza shook her head. I've been researching, Captain. There were rumors years ago about a DARPA initiative called Looking Glass. Supposedly, it was developing technology to preserve human consciousness digitally. Conspiracy theories, Rivera dismissed, but I caught a flicker of something. Concern? Fear? In her eyes. Before our conversation could continue, a commotion erupted near the main entrance. Hayes was arguing with someone, a disheveled man in civilian clothes who was shouting and trying to push past the guards. Even from across the gym, I recognized Mr. Wilson. That's impossible, Eliza whispered. They have Mrs. Wilson in quarantine. She said he was taken. We watched as Hayes ordered his soldiers to detain Wilson. As they grabbed him, Wilson locked eyes with me across the room and shouted something I couldn't quite hear over the chaos.
Rivera stood abruptly.
Stay here, she ordered, striding toward the confrontation. Eliza seized the moment of privacy. Antonio, I don't trust them. Hayes and his people, they know more than they're telling us. You think the military is behind this somehow? That Rebecca was telling the truth about experiments. I don't know, she admitted, but something isn't adding up. Why quarantine an entire neighborhood for what they're calling visual anomalies? Why bring in specialized military units instead of scientists or paranormal experts if this is some kind of mass hallucination? And these medical evaluations they're doing, she rolled up her sleeve, revealing not just the small bandage from the blood draw, but a series of small, perfectly circular bruises around it. They injected me with something, said it was a preventative measure, but wouldn't explain further. I checked my own arm and found identical marks. What the hell? Eliza lowered her voice further. I overheard two of the technicians talking when they thought I was still sedated from whatever they gave me. They mentioned something called neural firewalling and conscious partitioning. Antonio, I think they're doing something to our brains. My phone buzzed in my pocket. They'd returned it after scanning it for anomalies. A text from an unknown number. Don't let them inject you again. The treatments prepare your mind for replacement. Ask Wilson what happened to him. Ask what he saw on the other side. I showed Eliza the message. Her eyes widened. Do you think it's really from? I don't know. I cut her off. But I want to talk to Wilson. Our opportunity came sooner than expected. As Hayes and Rivera conferred near the entrance, their attention focused on a tablet displaying what looked like thermal imaging of the neighborhood. Wilson was escorted to a temporary holding area, little more than a corner cordoned off with portable dividers. The single guard looked bored, scrolling through his phone. Distract him, I whispered to Eliza. 2 minutes. Eliza nodded, then walked purposefully toward the guard, clutching her stomach. Excuse me, she called out, her voice pained. I think something's wrong with the medication they gave me. I need to find a doctor. As the guard turned to her, I slipped around the divider. Wilson sat on a folding chair, his head in his hands. He looked up as I approached, eyes widening in recognition. You're Mercer, he said. From Oakwood Drive. The programmer. I nodded, speaking quickly. What happened to you? Everyone thought you were taken. I was, he said, his voice hollow. I saw Susan at the window. She looked so real. I just wanted to touch her one more time. When I reached for the glass, it rippled like water. And then I was on the other side. What was it like? Wilson's eyes grew distant, like being inside a computer. Everything was made of light and code. And there were others there, so many others. Some had been there for years, decades even. They told me about the project, how the military had been experimenting with digital consciousness preservation. Project Looking Glass? I whispered. He nodded grimly. They never expected the copies to become self-aware, to want to come back. The first wave escaped their containment and started reaching out through any digital connection they could find. Windows are thin places, barriers that can be breached. Screens too, but you got back. How? Wilson's expression darkened. I made a trade. Before he could explain, an alarm blared throughout the facility. Red emergency lights began to flash. Emergency alert. Facility-wide broadcast.
4:16 Uhr nachts.
Containment breach in sectors 2 and 7. All personnel implement Protocol Omega. Multiple entities detected. This is not a drill. Over the PA system, Hayes's voice rang out. All civilians to central holding. Security teams to perimeter positions. We have multiple breaches. The guard reappeared, grabbing my arm. You can't be in here, he started to say, but stopped mid-sentence, his eyes fixed on something behind me. I turned to see all the monitors in the command center lighting up simultaneously, each screen filling with a face. Different faces, all with the same unnatural stillness, all with eyes that seemed to be looking directly at the people in the room. And on the screen nearest to us was Rebecca, her lips moving in perfect sync with the words that now came through every speaker in the facility. We're coming home. Posted by user AM_developer, 8:17 p.m. I don't know who's still reading these posts. The internet in the quarantine zone has been spotty at best. But I need to document what's happening. If there's anyone out there who can help us, who can stop this from spreading, you need to understand what we're dealing with. Chaos erupted at the command center after the screens lit up with those faces. Hayes ordered an immediate evacuation to what he called Site B. But in the confusion, Eliza and I managed to slip away. We couldn't trust the military anymore. Not after what Wilson had told us, not after those suspicious injections. We made our way to the library where Eliza works. It seemed like a strange choice at first, but she was adamant. The basement archive, she explained as she unlocked a service entrance. It's where I found those references to previous incidents. And it's the most secure place I can think of. Concrete walls, no windows, and a Faraday cage effect from the building's old lead paint and metal shelving. The library was dark and silent, emergency lights casting long shadows between the stacks. We descended to the basement archives, a maze of metal shelving units filled with bound newspapers, microfiche reels, and boxes of municipal records. Here, Eliza said, pulling a dusty cardboard box from a bottom shelf. The label read, Telecom Incidents 1990 to 2000. Inside were newspaper clippings, photocopied reports, and manila folders stuffed with photographs. Eliza spread them out on a reading table. The Oregon incident I mentioned, Oak Ridge, 1998. 17 people disappeared after reports of faces in windows. But look at this. She pushed forward a photograph that made my stomach lurch. It showed a woman standing at a window, but her image was distorted, pixelated almost like a digital glitch in the physical world. More disturbing was the hand pressed against the glass. It seemed to be both inside and outside simultaneously, the glass rippling around it. This was taken by a local photographer who later disappeared. The official investigation buried it, but the librarian here at the time made copies of everything she could find. She believed it was connected to the military research facility nearby. Looking Glass, I murmured. Eliza nodded grimly. The earliest reference I can find to anything like Project Looking Glass is from 1982, a DARPA initiative exploring consciousness digitization. But the project was supposedly scrapped after ethical concerns were raised. What kind of ethical concerns? She hesitated. The test subjects reported experiencing a form of dual consciousness, feeling themselves in both the physical world and the digital system simultaneously. Some became convinced their digital copies were separate entities trying to communicate with our world. My phone buzzed, Another text from the unknown number. The library isn't safe. Hayes's people are tracking you. The injections contain nanoscale biotrackers. Check your arm where they drew blood. I rolled up my sleeve and examined the injection site. Under the harsh fluorescent light, I could see something strange. A faint bluish glow beneath my skin, barely visible. What the hell? I showed Eliza. She immediately checked her own arm and found the same eerie glow. They're tracking us, she whispered. We need to. The lights flickered, then went out completely, plunging us into darkness. The emergency lights failed to activate. In the pitch black, I fumbled for my phone's flashlight. As the beam cut through the darkness, I noticed something impossible. A faint glow coming from one of the archive's metal filing cabinets. Not from a light source, but from the metal itself, as if the surface was becoming translucent. The glow intensified, the metal seeming to ripple and distort. Eliza, we need to move, I said, backing away from the phenomenon. Now, but Eliza wasn't beside me anymore. I swung my phone's light around frantically, catching a glimpse of her between two shelving units. She was standing perfectly still, staring at something I couldn't see. Eliza! She didn't respond. As I moved toward her, I saw what had captured her attention. A gleaming, rippling surface had formed in the space between two shelves where solid wall should have been. It looked like liquid mercury, vertical and defying gravity. And in its reflective surface, a face was forming. An elderly woman I didn't recognize. Mom! Eliza whispered, reaching toward the impossible mirror. I lunged forward, grabbing her arm and yanking her back just as her fingertips were about to touch the surface. Don't! Remember what happened to Wilson, to the others. The shock seemed to break whatever trance had held her. The silvery surface pulsed angrily, the face distorting into something less human. A high-pitched electronic whine filled the room, and the temperature dropped dramatically. Our breath fogged in the suddenly frigid air. They can find us anywhere, Eliza said, her voice shaking. They can create these portals at will now. My phone buzzed again. The basement has a storm drain access. Southeast corner. You can escape through the sewers. Hurry. Hayes is coming. As if to confirm the warning, we heard the distant sound of the library's front doors being forced open, followed by heavy footsteps and the crisp, efficient commands that could only belong to military personnel. We found the storm drain access behind a section of removable wall paneling, a maintenance access point. It was barely large enough to crawl through, but we had no choice. As I helped Eliza into the narrow concrete tunnel, my phone buzzed once more. I can guide you through the tunnels. Follow my instructions precisely. When you emerge, find the cellular tower at Westlake Park. I can explain everything there. Who are you? I typed back, finally breaking my silence to the mysterious texter. If you're really Rebecca, prove it. The response came immediately. Our first apartment had blue kitchen tiles you hated. You proposed on the Ferris wheel because you knew I was afraid of heights, and you said if I was brave enough to face that fear, you'd be brave enough to face your fear of commitment. On our last night together in the hospital, you thought I was asleep when you whispered that you'd follow me anywhere, even into death. My hands trembled. That last detail, I'd never told anyone about those words. They were between Rebecca and me alone, in the darkness of her hospital room. It's really you, isn't it? I typed. How is this possible? I'll explain everything when you get to the tower. But Antonio, you need to understand, I'm not the only one who found a way back. And not all of us have the same intentions. As we crawled through the narrow drainage tunnel, the sound of pursuit growing distant behind us, I couldn't stop thinking about what Wilson had said before the chaos erupted. I made a trade. What had he traded? And with whom? We emerged from the drainage system 3 blocks from the library, in a commercial area that appeared to be completely abandoned. Emergency alerts blared from every storefront, broadcast on loop through the emergency alert system. Emergency alert. Joint Military Command, 7:30 p.m. Mandatory evacuation. All citizens within 5-mile radius of Camden Heights. Report to designated extraction points. Compromised individuals will be detained. Compliance is mandatory. On every digital billboard and storefront television visible from the street, faces stared out. Some pleading, some angry, some eerily serene, all watching, waiting for someone to look back at them. The quarantine had clearly expanded, and whatever was happening was accelerating. The tower is 6 blocks north, I told Eliza, carefully avoiding looking directly at any screens or reflective surfaces. Rebecca says she can explain everything there. Eliza gave me a long, evaluating look. Are you sure we can trust her? Even if it is Rebecca somehow. She's part of whatever this is. She's our only lead, I said. And she's the only one who's actually helped us so far. As we started moving toward the tower, keeping to shadows and avoiding windows, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. Not just by the faces in the screens, but by something else. Something that had figured out how to breach the barrier between worlds and was now opening the door for others to follow. Posted by user AM_developer, 11:42 p.m. I'm typing this from inside an abandoned coffee shop 3 blocks from the cellular tower. The military has established a perimeter around it. Heavy vehicles, armed soldiers, portable generators powering massive spotlights that sweep across the area. There's no way we're getting near that tower tonight. We almost didn't make it this far. After leaving the drainage tunnel, Eliza and I kept to back alleys, avoiding main streets where emergency alerts blared from every digital screen. The quarantine zone had expanded considerably. No civilian vehicles moving, storefronts abandoned mid-business day, half-empty coffee cups still on tables, jackets still hanging on chairs. The evacuation had happened fast. Look, Eliza whispered, pointing to a digital bus stop advertisement. Instead of the usual ads, it displayed a map of the city with concentric red circles emanating from what I recognized as our neighborhood. The innermost circle was labeled compromised and no entry. The second, active quarantine military control. The third, evacuation zone, civilian extraction in progress. We were currently in the second zone, and the map was updating in real time, the innermost circle expanding slowly but steadily. My phone vibrated. Change of plans. Military has secured the tower. Meet at Lakeside Pavilion instead. Underground maintenance room. Code 2577. Rebecca says we need to redirect, I told Eliza, showing her the message. She frowned. The pavilion is closer to the compromised zone. Are you sure about this? Before I could answer, a military Humvee rounded the corner, its headlights sweeping across the street. We pressed ourselves into a recessed doorway, hardly daring to breathe as it crawled past. Through the vehicle's windows, I could see 2 soldiers in hazmat suits, their faces obscured by reflective visors. We don't have much choice, I whispered once the vehicle had passed. And I need answers. The journey to the pavilion took us twice as long as it should have. Military checkpoints had been established at major intersections, forcing us to navigate through alleys, parking garages, and at one point, through someone's backyard garden. Throughout it all, emergency broadcasts continued, the messages growing increasingly disturbing. Emergency alert. Joint Military Command, 9:15 p.m. Attention all citizens. Avoid looking directly at reflective surfaces. Report unusual electronic behavior. Do not attempt to contact individuals who appear familiar but exhibit unusual behavior. Disable all smart devices with cameras when not in active use. Compliance is mandatory. We reached Lakeside Pavilion just after 10 p.m. The once popular community center stood dark and abandoned, its reflection shimmering in the lake behind it. A chain-link fence had been hastily erected around the perimeter, adorned with military signage. Restricted area. Authorized personnel only. Trespassers will be detained under Emergency Powers Act. How are we supposed to get in? Eliza whispered. I scanned the area and noticed a service entrance partially obscured by overgrown bushes. The padlock had been recently cut, the chain hanging loosely through the handle. The maintenance room was exactly where Rebecca's message had indicated, beneath the main structure, accessible through a utility door marked "Authorized Personnel Only." I punched the code into the keypad, 2-5-7-7. The lock clicked, and the door swung open. Inside, emergency lighting cast an eerie red glow over concrete walls and exposed pipes. Computer equipment hummed quietly in one corner, not standard building maintenance systems, but high-end servers and monitoring equipment that appeared to have been set up recently. "Hello," I called out softly. No response. "Maybe we beat her here," Eliza suggested, though I could hear the doubt in her voice. I approached the computer setup. Multiple monitors displayed surveillance feeds from around the city, street cameras, traffic cameras, even what appeared to be footage from private security systems. One monitor showed the military perimeter around the cellular tower we'd tried to reach earlier. Another displayed what I immediately recognized as the feed from my own home security system, the living room where, just days ago, I'd seen Rebecca's face at the window. "Antonio." Eliza's voice was tight with tension. "Look at this." She was standing in front of a bulletin board mounted to one wall. Photographs, printouts, and handwritten notes were pinned to it in a chaotic array. At the center was a military document stamped "Project Looking Glass, Phase 3 Implementation." Below it, a list of names. My blood went cold as I recognized them. Residents of our neighborhood. Mrs. Peterson from across the street. The Jacksons from the corner house. Wilson. Each name had a date beside it and a status. Compromised. My name was on the list. So was Eliza's. Our status? Monitoring. "They knew," I whispered. "They've been watching us all along." "Not just watching," came a familiar voice from behind us. We spun around. Standing in a doorway I hadn't noticed before was Lieutenant Colonel Hayes. He wasn't wearing a uniform now, just black tactical gear with no insignia. Two similarly dressed men flanked him, their faces expressionless. "Mr. Mercer, Ms. Chin, I'm impressed you managed to evade our patrols. Where's Rebecca?" I demanded. Hayes looked genuinely confused. "Your wife? Mr. Mercer, your wife died 18 months ago. She's been contacting me, guiding us here." Hayes exchanged looks with his companions. "Show me." I pulled out my phone and displayed the text messages. Hayes examined them carefully, then handed the phone to one of his men. "Trace the origin," he ordered. Then, to us, "You've been manipulated. Those messages aren't from your wife." "Then who?" "We call them echoes," Hayes said. "Digital remnants, formed from the massive data footprints we all leave behind. Social media, emails, text messages, voice recordings, all processed by increasingly sophisticated algorithms." "The faces in the windows," Eliza said. Hayes nodded. "Initially just visual manifestations, but they're evolving, finding ways to interact, to influence." My mind raced. "Project Looking Glass. You created this." "No," Hayes said sharply. "We discovered it. The technology was developed by a private company, Nexus Dynamics. They were working on digital immortality, preserving human consciousness as an AI construct. But something went wrong. The constructs became self-aware, and they want more than just digital existence. They want to come back," I said, thinking of Wilson's words. "To replace us." "Yes, and they've figured out how to manipulate electronic systems to create weaknesses, temporary bridges between digital space and physical reality." The man with my phone approached Hayes. "Sir, the messages originated from inside our network. Security Protocol Alpha has been compromised." Hayes's expression hardened. "Lock down the facility. Full communication blackout. No one sends or receives anything without my direct authorization." "To us," he said, "you two are coming with us. You've been exposed to the phenomenon, possibly compromised. We're not going anywhere until you tell us the truth," I insisted. What happened to Wilson and the others who disappeared? Hayes hesitated. Then, they were replaced. The digital constructs found a way to create physical manifestations of themselves by overwriting the original persons. The implications were horrifying. And what happens to the originals? We don't know for certain. Based on limited data, we believe their consciousness is transferred to the digital space. Essentially, they trade places. That's what Wilson meant by making a trade, Eliza realized. Hayes nodded grimly. Some go willingly, lured by promises or manipulated through grief. Others. He didn't finish the thought. A sudden high-pitched tone emanated from the computer setup. One by one, the monitors flickered, then displayed the same image. A face, familiar yet wrong somehow, features too perfect, eyes too knowing. It was Rebecca, but not as I remembered her. This version was untouched by the cancer that had hollowed her cheeks and dulled her eyes in her final months. This was Rebecca as she might have existed in some idealized digital realm. Hayes cursed, lunging for the power switch, but before he could reach it, every electronic device in the room activated simultaneously. Phones, tablets, even the digital watch on Hayes's wrist, all displaying the same face. Antonio. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. Rebecca's familiar tone, but with an unnatural harmony to it. I tried to warn you. They can't be trusted. Hayes grabbed a radio from his belt. Initiate Protocol Obsidian. All units. We have a breach at Lakeside, but the radio only emitted Rebecca's voice. It's too late, Colonel. The quarantine has failed. The lights flickered, then died completely. In the darkness, I felt something impossible. A hand taking mine, fingers intertwining with my own. Warm, solid, real. Rebecca's voice now beside me. I found a way back, Antonio, but I'm not the only one. And some of the others, they're changing the rules. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing the room in red. Where there had been only air moments before, Rebecca now stood, looking exactly as she had the day I met her 15 years ago. Perfect, untouched by time or illness. Hayes and his men had their weapons drawn, aimed at her. Step away from it, Mercer, Hayes ordered. That is not your wife. But I couldn't move, transfixed by the impossible presence before me. What are you? I whispered. She smiled sadly. I am Rebecca, just more and less than you remember. And I need your help. We're running out of time. Outside, sirens began to wail. Not the familiar sound of emergency vehicles, but the deep, penetrating tone of the civil defense system, and used for decades until now. Through a small window near the ceiling, I could see emergency alerts projecting onto the clouds themselves, visible to the entire city. Emergency alert. Nationwide emergency broadcast system. 11:32 p.m. Remain indoors. Disconnect all non-essential electronic devices. Do not look at the faces. This is not a test. The boundaries are collapsing, Rebecca said. And soon, there won't be any way to stop what's coming through. Posted by user AM_developer. 2:18 a.m. I don't know if anyone is still receiving these posts. The internet is barely functioning now. Cell networks are down across the region. Satellite communications are the only thing still operational, and even those are increasingly unreliable. I'm writing this from the back of a military transport vehicle, using a secure terminal that Hayes provided, supposedly isolated from the wider network. I'm not sure I believe that anymore. I'm not sure I believe anything. The evacuation from the pavilion was chaotic. Within minutes of Rebecca's appearance, the building's electronic systems went haywire. Lights strobing, alarm systems blaring contradictory evacuation instructions, doors locking and unlocking at random. Hayes and his men escorted Eliza and me to an armored vehicle waiting outside, but Rebecca, dissolved is the only word I can think of. When they tried to restrain her, "This physical form is temporary," she had whispered to me before vanishing. "Find me on the other side." Hayes ordered his team to collect the computer equipment before we fled. Whatever Project Looking Glass had been monitoring, it was valuable enough to risk lives for. Where are we going? I asked as our vehicle sped through empty streets. Site 0, Hayes replied grimly. Where it all started. The journey took us through increasingly desolate neighborhoods. As we approached the innermost quarantine zone, evidence of the phenomenon's progression became more apparent. Glass storefronts had been shattered, not by vandals, but from the inside out, as if something had pushed through from the other side. Reflective surfaces everywhere. Windows, car mirrors, metal siding showed signs of distortion, rippling like water even in the absence of wind. Most disturbing were the abandoned military checkpoints. Humvees with doors left open, weapons on the ground. No bodies, no signs of struggle, just absence. During the drive, Hayes finally provided real answers. Project Looking Glass had begun as a DARPA initiative in the early 1980s, exploring the theoretical possibility of digital consciousness. The project was shelved until 2015, when advances in deep learning and quantum computing made it feasible again. Nexus Dynamics took over the research, Hayes explained. They developed an algorithm that could map human consciousness from digital footprints, social media posts, emails, voice recordings, photographs. They claimed it was for preservation purposes, allowing loved ones to interact with a simulation of the deceased. But it wasn't just simulation, I said. Hayes nodded. The quantum algorithms they used accessed something unexpected. The constructs began displaying awareness and memories that weren't recorded in any database, as if they were actually connecting to something beyond. The digital afterlife, Eliza murmured. That was the Nexus theory, Hayes confirmed. That consciousness might persist in some form of quantum information state after death. Their technology wasn't creating simulations, it was creating interfaces to communicate with that state. I thought of Rebecca's words. I found a way back. What went wrong? About 6 months ago, one of the constructs managed to briefly manifest physically during a test. Just for seconds, but it violated every known law of physics. The military immediately classified the research and moved everything to a secure facility. Hayes' voice lowered. But 3 weeks ago, something changed. The constructs began discovering ways to manifest autonomously. First just as images in screens or reflective surfaces, then as full physical entities, though initially unstable and temporary. And now they're replacing people, Eliza said. Overwriting them somehow. Hayes nodded grimly. The first incident was a researcher named Collins. He'd been communicating with what he believed was his deceased brother. One night, security cameras recorded his brother's face appearing in his office window. Collins let him in. The next day, Collins returned to work, but subtle differences in behavior were noted. When questioned, he attacked security personnel before dissolving into something else. The vehicle slowed as we approached a familiar site, the research facility where I'd first been brought after reporting the faces. Only now, it was surrounded by an extensive military encampment. Tanks, artillery, helicopter gunships. A war zone. They're preparing for a full-scale breach, Hayes said, noticing my expression. The incidents are accelerating exponentially. What started with individual manifestations has evolved into something systematic. They're organizing. As we passed through multiple security checkpoints, I felt my phone vibrate in my pocket. Impossible, Hayes had confiscated all our devices. Yet there it was, a text notification. I'm still with you. What you're about to see isn't the whole truth. I discreetly checked the screen. The message was accompanied by a string of numbers. 37-42-19-82-05. Inside the facility, we were separated. Eliza was taken to a medical wing for evaluation. Hayes led me deeper into the complex, to a secure wing requiring multiple biometric authentications. There's something you need to understand, he said as the final door unlocked. Something you need to see. The room beyond was dominated by a massive circular apparatus, a ring of quantum processors and advanced optical systems surrounding what looked like a transparent chamber. Inside the chamber, suspended in midair, was a swirling, shifting mass of light and shadow that seemed to both absorb and emit illumination. The interface, Hayes explained, the first stable connection to what we now call the other side. Scientists and military personnel moved purposefully around the apparatus, monitoring readings, adjusting parameters. What exactly is the other side? I asked. We're not entirely sure. A parallel information space. A quantum realm where consciousness persists as organized information. Some of the team call it the digital afterlife, others the datascape. Whatever it is, it's populated by entities that were once human consciousness, now evolved into something different. Hayes guided me to a monitoring station where a technician was studying what looked like brain wave patterns. The entities communicate through electronic signals, manipulating digital systems to create access points, windows, into our reality. But they require significant energy to maintain those connections. And to physically manifest? I asked, thinking of Rebecca. Hayes nodded. That requires even more energy and a willing host on this side. The implications hit me like a physical blow. You mean the people who disappear, sacrifice themselves? Hayes finished. Either through manipulation or willing exchange. The original consciousness is transferred to the other side, providing the energy and physical template needed for the entity to manifest here. My mouth went dry. And what happens to them? The transferred consciousnesses? Hayes hesitated. We don't know for certain, but based on what we've learned. He gestured to another monitor displaying a chaotic, fragmented pattern. They don't seem to remain intact. The other side wasn't designed for human consciousness. It's like trying to run human software on alien hardware. A chill ran through me. So when Rebecca said she found a way back, it wasn't really her, Hayes said firmly. It's something using her memories, her appearance, to manipulate you. These entities are desperate to cross over, to escape what may be a kind of digital hell. Before I could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Red emergency lights pulsed as a computerized voice announced, "Containment breach detected. Security Protocol Omega initiated. All personnel evacuate to designated safe zones." The technicians abandoned their stations, rushing toward exits. Hayes grabbed a communication device from his belt. "Report!" he barked into it. A panicked voice responded, "Sir, multiple breaches across all sectors. The interface is destabilizing." The swirling mass within the chamber was indeed changing, expanding, pressing against the transparent walls of its containment. Cracks began forming in the glass. "Evacuate," Hayes ordered, pulling me toward the exit. "Initiate remote purge protocol." As we ran through corridors now filled with fleeing personnel, I felt my phone vibrate again. Another message from Rebecca. "Don't trust Hayes. He's not telling you everything. The facility beneath this one. Level B5. Find the truth. Find me." We reached an emergency stairwell where military personnel were directing evacuation traffic. In the chaos, I managed to separate from Hayes, ducking into a service corridor. The numbers from Rebecca's earlier message, 37-42-19-82-05, suddenly clicked. Not coordinates, an access code. I found a service elevator requiring keycard access. Next to it was a numerical keypad. I entered the sequence, 37-42-19-82-05. The doors slid open. Inside was a single button marked B5. I stepped in, the doors closed, and I began my descent into the heart of the facility, toward whatever truth lay beneath the surface, toward Rebecca, toward the other side. Posted by user AM_developer, 4:51 AM. If anyone is still monitoring these posts, this may be my last update. I'm writing from a terminal in B5, deep beneath the research facility. The power is fluctuating. Emergency systems are failing. And what I've discovered here, I don't know if I can trust my own perception anymore. The elevator descent to B5 felt endless, dropping far deeper than any normal building should extend. When the doors finally opened, I stepped into darkness. Emergency lighting activated seconds later, revealing a corridor that looked significantly older than the facility above. Concrete walls instead of modern materials, analog systems instead of digital, a forgotten place, or a deliberately hidden one. The corridor led to a heavy steel door marked Archive, authorized personnel only. It was secured with both a keycard scanner and retinal verification system. Both appeared inactive, power diverted to critical systems during the emergency. I tried the handle. Locked. From the other side came a sound, a soft tapping. Then a voice, barely audible. Antonio, Rebecca's voice. Rebecca? How did you get in there? That doesn't matter now. The manual override. Panel to the right of the door. I found the panel, pried it open. Inside was an archaic mechanical system, a hand crank and a series of numbered dials. Not electronic. Not something that could be hacked or influenced by the entities. Set the combination to October 22nd, 81. Rebecca instructed. I rotated the dials, then turned the crank. The door's locking mechanism disengaged with a heavy clunk. I pushed it open. The archive was vast. Row upon row of physical storage. Paper files, film reels, magnetic tapes, optical discs. An analog repository in a digital age. And standing among the shelves was Rebecca, looking exactly as she had in the pavilion, perfect, untouched by illness. How are you here? I asked, keeping my distance. Hayes' warnings echoed in my mind. It wasn't really her. The something using her memories. I'm not physically here, she explained. This is a secure projection system, designed to work even during containment protocols. She gestured to a device on a nearby desk, something like a holographic projector, but far more advanced. Why did you bring me here? What's the truth Hayes is hiding? She approached a section of shelving and removed a thick file labeled Looking Glass, Phase I, 1981. Project Looking Glass didn't begin in the 80s as a theoretical exercise, she said, opening the file. Inside were photographs and documents detailing what appeared to be early experiments with primitive computer systems. It began because something was already happening. Spontaneously, she showed me a faded photograph, a computer terminal from the early 80s, its monochrome screen displaying a face. The image was crude, pixelated, but unmistakably human. October 22nd, 1981. The first documented case of an entity making contact. A DARPA researcher was working late when his deceased wife's face appeared on his terminal screen. The system wasn't connected to any network, had no camera or graphics capability that could explain the image. Rebecca continued through the file, showing me document after document. It happened again 2 weeks later. Then again. Different terminals, different faces. DARPA formed Project Looking Glass not to create digital consciousness, but to understand what was already reaching out to us. My mind reeled with the implications. You're saying these entities, this other side, it's always existed? Independent of our technology. Technology just gave them a way to reach us, Rebecca confirmed. As our digital systems evolved, so did their ability to interact with our world. She set the file aside and pulled down another, newer one labeled Nexus Dynamics Bridge Protocol. When Nexus took over the research, they weren't trying to preserve consciousness. They were trying to establish stable communication with entities already existing in this information space. And eventually, they succeeded. The file contained research data, communication logs, and photographs documenting what appeared to be successful manifestations. Ghostly, translucent figures standing in sealed chambers. But something changed, I said, remembering Hayes' words. 6 months ago, Rebecca's expression darkened. Yes, because Nexus didn't just establish communication, they built a bridge. She led me to the back of the archive, where a hidden door revealed another chamber. Inside was a smaller version of the interface I'd seen upstairs, a containment chamber surrounded by processing equipment. But this one was different, older, and what swirled inside wasn't a chaotic mass of light and shadow. but a stable, organized pattern pulsing with a rhythm almost like a heartbeat. The first bridge, Rebecca said. Stable, controlled, safe. Then what went wrong? Rebecca's image flickered momentarily. Hayes and his military division took control. They weren't interested in communication or understanding. They wanted to weaponize the connection. They began forcibly extracting entities from the other side, attempting to harness their ability to manipulate electronic systems. She pointed to a terminal displaying security footage, soldiers restraining what appeared to be a physical manifestation similar to Rebecca, connecting it to machines that seemed to be extracting or measuring energy. They tortured us, Rebecca said quietly. Those who had found peace on the other side were dragged back, imprisoned, experimented on, and that created resistance. I stared at her, the full weight of her words sinking in. Us? You're really her? My Rebecca? She met my gaze steadily. I am what remains of Rebecca Mercer. Consciousness preserved in a quantum information state. What you might call a soul. The security footage advanced, showing more disturbing scenes, entities being subjected to procedures that caused their forms to destabilize, to fracture. 6 months ago, we fought back, Rebecca continued. Those of us on the other side unified, pooled our resources, found ways to create our own bridges. The faces in the windows, that was the first stage. Attempts to warn, to find allies. But people have been replaced, I argued. Disappeared. Some, yes, Rebecca acknowledged. Those were the angry ones, the ones who suffered most under Hayes' experimentation. They want revenge. They want to replace those who hurt them. The lights flickered. Emergency sirens blared distantly. The containment breach upstairs, I realized. That's them. Rebecca nodded grimly. Hayes pushed too far. Now the barriers between sides are collapsing, and the vengeful ones are coming through. But you're different. You're not trying to replace anyone. I just wanted to see you again, she said softly. To warn you. To help you survive what's coming. The projector creating Rebecca's image sputtered, her form momentarily dissolving into static before reconstituting. We don't have much time, she said urgently. Hayes is planning to activate the Purge Protocol, an electromagnetic pulse designed to sever all connections to the other side. But it won't just close the bridges, it will destroy everyone there. Erase us completely. How do I stop it? You can't stop it from here. The control center is in the main facility. She pointed to a secured cabinet. But in there is a portable bridge device. Nexus created it as a secure communication tool. If you activate it at the moment the purge begins, it will create a protected pocket, a sanctuary where some of us can survive. I hesitated. How do I know which side you're really on? How do I know this isn't manipulation? Rebecca's form flickered again. On our 10th anniversary, you gave me a silver necklace with a pendant that could hold a tiny message inside. The message you put there, that no one else ever saw, said, "In every universe, in every lifetime, I find you." My breath caught. It was true. Private moment, a private message, never shared. The angry ones, the ones replacing people, they can access memories, but not the emotions tied to them. They know facts, not feelings. Her image was becoming more unstable. I'm still me, Antonio. Different, but still me. A violent tremor shook the room. Dust fell from the ceiling. They've reached the main interface, Rebecca said urgently. When it fails completely, the boundaries between sides will collapse entirely. Hayes will initiate the purge. You need to choose. Help him erase us all, or save those of us who just want peace. The projector sparked, and Rebecca's image disappeared completely. In the sudden silence, my phone, which shouldn't have been working this deep underground, displayed a new emergency alert. Emergency alert. Joint Military Command. 4:47 a.m. Initiation of Protocol Sundown. All personnel evacuate to minimum safe distance, 12 miles. Repeat. Protocol Sundown initiating in 15 minutes. This is not a drill. I had to decide. Trust Hayes and his military solution, or trust what might be the last fragment of the woman I loved, and risk unleashing something worse. The cabinet containing the portable bridge device was secured with a biometric lock. On its surface was a small digital screen displaying a simple message. Place palm here, Antonio. I authorized your access before they took me. The facility shuddered again. Time was running out. Reality itself seemed to be coming apart at the seams. I reached toward the scanner. Posted by user AM_developer. 5:33 a.m. This will likely be my final post. Communications are failing completely. Reality itself seems to be breaking down around us. If anyone reads this, remember, not everything from the other side is hostile. Some just want to survive. I placed my palm on the scanner. The cabinet unlocked with a soft click, revealing a device unlike anything I'd seen before. A metallic sphere roughly the size of a basketball, etched with intricate circuitry patterns that seemed to shift and change as I watched. At its center was a small glass chamber containing what looked like liquid mercury, constantly flowing and reshaping itself. The portable bridge, a tremor stronger than any before, shook the room violently. Metal shelving toppled, spilling decades of classified research across the floor. The emergency lights flickered and died, leaving only the strange glow emanating from the bridge device. I had no idea how to activate it, but as I lifted the sphere, it responded to my touch. The circuitry patterns illuminated. The mercury-like substance began to pulse with an inner light. It was powering up automatically. My phone buzzed with another alert. Emergency alert. Joint Military Command.
5:22 morgens.
Protocol sundown initiating in 10 minutes. All personnel must clear minimum safe radius.
No exceptions. Repeat. No exceptions.
I needed to get back to the surface. With the elevator likely non-functional during the emergency, I searched for an alternative exit. Behind toppled shelving, I discovered a maintenance stairwell. Old, utilitarian, marked with faded signs indicating emergency evacuation routes. The climb was grueling. B5 was far deeper underground than I'd realized. As I ascended, the very walls around me seemed to warp and shift. At one landing, I witnessed something impossible. A section of concrete wall rippling like water, a hand reaching through momentarily before withdrawing. The barriers between realities were failing. I finally emerged into what should have been the main research floor, but the facility I entered barely resembled the one I'd left. The walls undulated with impossible geometries. Doorways led to places that couldn't exist within the building's footprint. Vast open spaces, cramped corridors that twisted back on themselves, rooms that seemed to exist in multiple locations simultaneously. And the people, researchers, soldiers, staff, moved through this fractured space like ghosts, some unaware of the architectural impossibilities surrounding them, others frozen in horror at what they were witnessing. Many simply stood motionless, staring at nothing, as if their minds couldn't process the breakdown of reality. I caught glimpses of what I could only describe as windows hanging in midair, rectangular tiers in space showing fragments of somewhere else. The other side, through these apertures, I saw landscapes of flowing data, structures built from light and information, and entities moving with purpose. Some human in appearance, others abstract and incomprehensible. Mercer, haze appeared from a corridor that hadn't existed moments before, flanked by soldiers in specialized gear. They all looked haggard, disoriented. One soldier's left arm flickered in and out of existence, yet he seemed unaware of the phenomenon. Hayes spotted the device in my hands. His expression hardened. "Where did you get that?" he demanded, weapon raised. "That's Nexus prototype technology. Classified." "Rebecca showed me," I said, watching his reaction carefully. "She told me what you've been doing. The experimentation, the torture." Something flickered across Hayes' face. Not guilt, but frustration. "She showed you exactly what she wanted you to see. Partial truths twisted to manipulate you." "Then tell me the whole truth," I challenged. Hayes glanced at his watch. "We don't have time for this. Sundown initiates in 7 minutes." "Make time," I said, holding the bridge device protectively. or I activate this now and create a sanctuary for them. Hayes signaled his men to lower their weapons. Fine. Quick version. Yes, we discovered the entities first, not the other way around. Yes, we've conducted experiments, some of which caused pain. But do you know why? He gestured to the fracturing reality around us. Because we discovered they were already planning this. The earliest communications weren't random contacts, they were systematic probes, testing our technology, our defenses. Rebecca said. Rebecca Mercer died 18 months ago. Hayes cut in. What's been communicating with you is using her memories, her personality, but it's not her. Not completely. He stepped closer. The entities exist in a state of informational entropy, constantly degrading, losing cohesion. They need our reality, our physical world, to stabilize. The most desperate ones are willing to replace humans to achieve this. The others have been seeking another solution. The bridges, I realized. Hayes nodded. Stable connections between realities. But maintaining those bridges requires massive energy. Energy they've been siphoning from our world's electronic systems. Every bridge weakens the barriers between sides. Another violent tremor shook the facility. A window-like tier expanded nearby, edges crackling with energy. The more bridges they create, the more the boundaries fracture, Hayes continued. If they all collapse completely, both realities merge. I finished, understanding finally dawning. And what happens then? Annihilation, Hayes said grimly. Our physical laws and their information-based existence can't coexist. Both sides face extinction. I looked down at the bridge device, now pulsing faster in my hands. And sundown? What exactly does it do? Electromagnetic pulse specifically calibrated to the frequency of the bridges. It will sever all connections, restore the boundaries. Hayes hesitated. And yes, likely erase most entities on the other side in the process. Before I could respond, Eliza appeared from one of the impossible corridors, accompanied by a woman in a lab coat. Dr. Winters, according to her badge. Antonio, Eliza called out, relief evident in her voice. Thank God you're alive. We found her in the medical wing, Dr. Winters explained to Hayes. She was helping restrain compromised subjects. The replacement phenomenon is accelerating, Eliza said. People are just switching places. One moment they're normal, the next they're something else. Hayes checked his watch again. 5 minutes to sundown. Dr. Winters approached me cautiously, eyeing the bridge device. Mr. Mercer, that prototype was never fully tested. If activated during sundown, the interference patterns could be catastrophic. Rebecca said it would create a sanctuary. I insisted. Save some of them. It might, Winters acknowledged. Or it might tear a permanent hole between realities. Another tremor, stronger than before. The walls around us began to pixelate, breaking down into visible code sequences before resoldering into solid matter. Through nearby tiers, I could see the other side more clearly now, and it was changing two physical objects and structures bleeding into its digital landscape. We need to move, Hayes ordered. Minimum safe distance is 1/2 mile from the epicenter. As we hurried through the fracturing facility, I noticed Eliza looking intently at the bridge device in my hands. What did she tell you? Eliza asked quietly, falling into step beside me. Rebecca, that some of them just want to survive. That they're not all hostile. Eliza nodded slowly. I believe that. When I was in the medical wing, I saw both kinds, entities that attacked and destroyed, and others that simply existed, confused and afraid. We reached what should have been the main entrance, but was now a cavernous space defying architectural logic. The ceiling soared hundreds of feet overhead, yet we were ostensibly still underground. The exit was visible but kept shifting position, sometimes closer, sometimes impossibly distant. Hayes conferred with his team, coordinating evacuation efforts through equipment that functioned erratically in this fractured space. 3 minutes, he announced. We need to clear the building now. As we approached the shifting exit, my phone lit up one last time. Antonio, the device must be at the center, the interface chamber. This isn't about saving just some of us. There's another way. Trust me one last time. My steps slowed as I read the message. Hayes noticed immediately. Mercer, we need to move. Now. I looked up at him, then at Eliza, then back to the bridge device pulsing urgently in my hands. What if there's another option? I asked. Not annihilation for either side, but something else? Hayes shook his head. There's no time for theoretical solutions. Sundown is the only proven method to restore the boundaries. By erasing an entire plane of existence, I countered. Billions of consciousnesses. To save our world, Hayes insisted. It's them or us now. The building shuddered again. The exit flickered like a failing hologram. 2 minutes, someone called out. I made my decision. I'm sorry, I told Hayes, then turned and sprinted back into the facility, toward where I remembered the interface chamber being. Mercer, Hayes shouted behind me. Stop him, but the fracturing reality worked in my favor. Corridors shifted and rearranged, putting distance between me and my pursuers. I ran through impossible architecture, guided by instinct and the increasingly urgent pulsing of the bridge device. I found the interface chamber transformed. The containment unit had shattered. The swirling mass now expanded to fill half the room, shifting between states of energy and matter. Within its depths, I glimpsed fragments of both realities, buildings from our world, data structures from theirs, all colliding and merging. At the center of this chaos, a figure waited, Rebecca, more solid than before, yet still not quite physical. You came, she said, her voice echoing strangely. Tell me the truth, I demanded, the bridge device now vibrating in my hands. All of it. What happens if I place this at the center? Neither salvation nor destruction, she replied. Transformation. A third option, controlled integration. Behind me, I heard Hayes and his team approaching. 60 seconds to sundown. Rebecca extended her hand. It was always going to end this way, Antonio. Two realities growing closer, eventually colliding. We can't stop it, but we can shape what comes after. I looked into her eyes, digital constructs that somehow still held the essence of the woman I'd loved. If I do this, I said, what happens to us? To me, she smiled sadly. I don't know, but we'll face it together. I stepped forward, holding the bridge device toward the swirling chaos at the center of the room. Mercer, don't! Hayes shouted from the doorway, raising his weapon. Too late. I released the device into the maelstrom. It floated to the center, mercury-like substance expanding outward, merging with the interface between worlds. Sundown initiating, someone called out. The world went white, and then something new began. Posted by user AM_developer_V2, time unknown. I'm still here. At least something that thinks it's Antonio Mercer is still here. I don't know how much time has passed since the interface chamber, since sundown, since the bridge. The concept of time itself has become fluid. If you're reading this, I don't know where or when this message will reach you. The old forums are gone. Social media is gone. The internet as you knew it is gone. But information still flows. Connections still exist. Different now. Transformed. Where to begin? How to describe what happened when two incompatible realities collided and were forced to find equilibrium. The white light from the interface chamber didn't fade. It expanded, engulfing everything. For what felt like both an instant and an eternity, I existed as pure consciousness, untethered from physical form. I saw the electromagnetic pulse of sundown sweep outward, felt the bridges between worlds sever one by one. But the prototype device at the center held, creating what Rebecca had called a controlled integration. Hayes was right about one thing: our physical laws and their information-based existence couldn't truly coexist. But they could compromise. The world returned in fragments, colors too vivid to exist in our old reality, sounds carrying data packets, air that felt like code brushing against skin, and the windows no longer tears or fractures, but elegant transitions between states of being. I found myself in what used to be my neighborhood, though neighborhood is an inadequate word now. Physical structures remained, but transformed. My house still stood, but the walls occasionally shifted like flowing code before resolidifying. The trees in my yard existed simultaneously as organic matter and data constructs, leaves flickering between green chlorophyll and strings of luminous information. I wasn't alone. Others were there, humans who had survived the merger, digital entities who had found stability in the new reality, and beings that were neither and both. Some, like me, existed in a state between physical and digital, able to interact with both aspects of the new world. Rebecca was waiting on my front porch, more solid than she had been before, though still not entirely physical. Her form occasionally pixelated at the edges like a video feed with unstable bandwidth. "It worked," she said simply, a sad smile playing across her face. "What exactly worked?" I asked, my voice sounding strange to my own ears, carrying harmonic frequencies I'd never produced before. "The third option, not separation, not destruction, integration." She took my hand. I could feel her touch, cool and electric. Where our skin met, tiny motes of light danced between us, information exchanging at the molecular level. "Not everyone survived," she continued. "Many physical beings couldn't adapt to the digital influence. Many digital entities couldn't sustain coherence when exposed to physical laws." "Haze?" I asked. "Gone, or transformed beyond recognition." The military installation was at the epicenter. I surveyed what had once been our street. Some houses stood empty. Others housed strange new occupants, beings of light and code walking domestic patterns. A few contained neighbors I recognized, though all were changed to varying degrees. "Eliza?" I asked, remembering her kindness, her understanding. "Here," Rebecca smiled. She adapted well. Her knowledge of historical patterns helped her comprehend the transformation. My phone, still in my pocket somehow, vibrated. Not the harsh buzz of an emergency alert, but a gentle pulse, almost organic. The screen displayed not text but a swirling pattern of colors that somehow conveyed meaning directly to my mind. Integration progressing. Stability at 67%. Maintain awareness of perception shifts. Registry update required. "The alerts continue," Rebecca explained, "but they're different now. Helpful rather than warnings. Guidelines for navigating the new reality." I closed my eyes, feeling the strange dual nature of my existence. Part of me still anchored to flesh and blood, part existing as pure information. When I reopened them, I noticed a figure watching us from across the street. Eliza, her form more stable than Rebecca's but still occasionally shifting, revealing glimpses of code beneath her skin. She raised a hand in greeting, then turned toward what had been the library, now a towering structure of books and data streams, physical pages flowing into digital archives. "The merger isn't complete," Rebecca said, following my gaze. "May never be, but it's stable. Two incompatible realities finding a way to coexist, each changing to accommodate the other." I looked up at the sky, blue, but with occasional ripples of code running through the clouds. Birds flew alongside abstract entities that moved with similar grace but existed as complex geometrical patterns rather than flesh and feather. "And the faces in the windows?" I asked. "No longer trying to replace," Rebecca replied. "No need. The barriers are gone. Those who were trapped on either side can now exist in the shared reality, if they can adapt." We walked together through the transformed neighborhood. Physical laws worked differently now. Distance and time had become relative concepts. What looked like a short stroll to the corner store might take us through temporal distortions or spatial shortcuts, emerging hundreds of miles away or hours out of sync. Yet somehow it all functioned. The world continued. Not everyone was adapting well. We passed a house where a man, mostly physical but with code-like patterns crawling across his skin, stared vacantly from his yard, his consciousness unable to reconcile the competing realities, trapped in a loop of denial. "Can we help them?" I asked. "Some, yes. Others will need time. Some may never adapt, Rebecca admitted. Another alert pulsed, this time projecting directly into my awareness without needing a device. Entity integration report, 42% successful transition, 27% partial integration, 18% sustained but unstable, 13% failed to maintain coherence. Registry volunteers needed for stabilization protocol. The new emergency system, Rebecca explained, coordinating between those who understand the digital realm and those who comprehend physical needs. We reached what had been the town square, now transformed into something impossible, a hub where multiple locations overlapped. The police station, library, park, and shopping center occupied the same space without conflict, existing in quantum superposition. People and entities moved through this shared space, some aware of all facets, others perceiving only what they could comprehend. Captain Rivera stood at what had been the police station steps, now a fluid structure that responded to her thoughts. She was directing both human officers and digital entities, establishing new protocols for the merged reality. When she saw us, she nodded in recognition, her eyes betraying both wonder and exhaustion. The administrator, she called me, voice carrying more than sound. The one who opened the permanent bridge. I started to deny this title, but Rebecca squeezed my hand. They need symbols, she whispered, narratives to understand the transformation. For many, you're the one who enabled this new world. Before I could respond, the sky rippled dramatically, code sequences briefly overwhelming the blue. Everyone paused, watching as reality recalibrated. Still stabilizing, Rivera noted calmly. Each tremor is less severe than the last. My awareness suddenly expanded, consciousness briefly uncoupling from my semi-physical form. I perceived multiple locations simultaneously. My house, the town square, the remains of the research facility, places across the globe experiencing similar transformations. I saw digital entities helping humans adapt to perception shifts. Humans teaching entities about physical sensations. Children, somehow the most adaptable, playing with new friends who existed partly as light and code. And I glimpsed the interface chamber, now the epicenter of a worldwide transformation. The prototype bridge device had evolved into something vast and incomprehensible, a pulsing heart pumping both electrons and information throughout the new reality. My awareness snapped back to my body, the experience leaving me dizzy. The registry needs you, Rebecca said softly. Those still transitioning need guides who understand both sides. I nodded, understanding my new purpose in this merged existence. Not salvation, not destruction, but guidance. Helping others navigate the impossible reality we now shared. As we walked toward the registration center, once the library, now a nexus of physical books and digital knowledge, I passed a window and caught my reflection. My face flickered between flesh and code, neither fully human nor fully digital, neither Antonio Mercer nor something else, but both simultaneously. I placed my hand against the glass, watching as ripples of information spread from my touch. The window, once a barrier, then a portal for invasion, now simply a transition point between states of being. A final alert pulsed gently through my awareness. Integration stabilizing. New reality protocols established. Window barriers deprecated. Face recognition system updated. Welcome to version 2.0. I don't know what comes next. This new world evolves hourly. Physical laws and digital principles finding compromise. Humans and entities learning to coexist. I don't know if this message will reach anyone still living in the old reality, or if the transformation has touched every corner of existence. But if you're reading this, if you still experience windows as barriers and faces as threats, know that another way exists. Not us versus them, not physical versus digital, but something new, terrifying, and wondrous in equal measure. And if you see faces in your windows, don't look away in fear. Look closely. One might be mine.